It is said that the heir of Ranjit Singh, Dalip Singh, willingly gave over the Koh-i-Noor to Queen Victoria. But why then was the Koh-i-Noor smuggled out of India in a very covert operation? Hi, I'm Arij.
And I'm Nisha. Welcome to Tariqi Tales. And this is the Sikh series where we delve deep into the empire of the Sikhs in Punjab, from its beginnings to the fall and what happened to its descendants afterwards. And within this spectrum also lies the story of the diamond, the Koh-i-Noor. It's not the complete story of the diamond, but it's a huge chunk. So let's get into that. So until 1725, India was actually one of the world's few good sources of diamonds and precious stones until they found diamond mines in Brazil. And when I say diamond mines, it's actually funny because they weren't actually mines. People would be basically taking diamonds out of the riverbeds. They would be sifting the clay and they would find chunks of diamond. There was a whole process to it, but that's majorly how they found these diamonds. And you can tell that India has a very, very long history with precious gems because some of the oldest books on gemology actually stem from India. And with all the history it has, we have a lot of references to old Indian empires having, you know, how in Europe there was a certain way of dressing and decorum to kind of mark your rank in the court. But in the courts in India, the hierarchy was kind of determined by the jewelry that you wore. And there were very strict rules as to what type of stones, what type of cuts different ranks of people can wear in the court. So the Koh-i-Noor was basically mined in India. And initially in 1300s, it was in the hands of the Raja of Malwa. And then it changed a few hands and passed around through different empires and regions a lot. Now, eventually, it lands into the hands of the Mughals in India. And the first mention that we have of the Koh-i-Noor from an official source in the Mughal histories is in the time of Shah Jahan. So in 1826, Shah Jahan commissioned a magnificent throne called the Peacock Throne. It was 4 times as expensive as the Taj Mahal. Can you believe that? So basically in the 1700s, Nadir Shah, the Afghans, attacked the Mughal Empire. And Nadir Shah ended up taking the Peacock Throne along with the diamond Koh-i-Noor. And then it stayed for a little while in the Afghan families. It went from Nadir Shah to the Durrani family, and from the Durrani family is where Ranjit Singh actually gets the diamond back. It was a wife of Shah Shuja Durrani actually who gave the diamond to Ranjit Singh, and she initially had a deal with Ranjit Singh where she wanted him to step in and save Shah Shuja Durrani from his brother who was trying to kill him because of the throne and whatnot. And Ranjit Singh did do that. He stepped up and he saved them. But after everything was done, Shah Shuja's wife basically decided that no, I don't want to give you the Koh-i-Noor. And Ranjit Singh got really mad because he had his eyes set on the stone. Because that stone by this point symbolized a lot of power and glory, right? So he basically put both Shah Shuja and his wife under house arrest. And after a little period of time, they decided to give him the stone. So now the stone comes back into Punjab and resides in the Toshakhana of Ranjit Singh in Lahore. That is until the British come.
Now the diamond had finally made its way into the Toshakhana of Ranjit Singh. And what's interesting is that it wasn't the only precious diamond that Ranjit Singh possessed. He had kind of a flair for this, and he had 2-3 diamonds that are really interesting I will tell you about. Okay, so his collection included the Koh-i-Noor. It also included the 186 carat pink diamond called the Koh-i-Noor, as well as the 361 carat red spinal ruby called the Timur ruby. During his lifetime, Ranjit Singh basically wore the Koh-i-Noor in an armlet, and they had maintained its weight at like 186 carat. After his death in 1839, the diamond kind of passed hands until it fell into the hand of the youngest prince, Dalip Singh, in 1843. He possessed it briefly, and then the Anglo-Sikh Wars occurred, and the diamond went to the British in 1849. More details on these wars in these videos above, but essentially when they took over, the British also took over the Toshakhana or the treasury of the Sikhs as well. While taking possession of the treasury, they had the Treaty of Lahore written up, which essentially mentioned that all of these things were war booty. But what's really interesting is that in the initial treaty, Koh-i-Noor wasn't specifically mentioned. First, the Maharani Jind Kaur was imprisoned and kind of taken away from the young prince, and then an amendment was made to the Treaty of Lahore. The gem called the Koh-i-Noor, which was taken from Shah Shuja ul Mulk by Maharaja Ranjit Singh, shall be surrendered by the Maharaja of Lahore to the Queen of England. And this was done based on the vision of the then Governor General, I'll say the name because it's very long, James Andrew Brown Ramsay. And essentially, what we need to remember is that he is the future Lord Dalhousie. Through all the diamonds mentioned in the Toshakhana, Dalhousie saw the Koh-i-Noor as this symbol of triumph for then colonial Britain, and he thought that was the best thing to present to the Queen at that time. He has a very passionate diary entry in which he writes, and I quote, "The Koh-i-Noor has ever been the symbol of conquest. The Emperor of Delhi had it in his peacock throne, while Shah Shuja ul Mulk was king. Ranjit Singh extorted the diamond by gross violence and cruelty, and now when, as a result of unprovoked war, the British government has conquered the Kingdom of Punjab and has resolved to add it into the territories of the British Empire in India, I have a right to compel the Maharaja of Lahore, in token of his submission, to surrender the jewel to the Queen, and it may find its final and fitting resting place in the crown in Britain. For there is not one of those who has held it since its original possessor who can boast so just a title its possession as the Queen of England can claim after two bloody and unprovoked wars." Well, it's safe to say that that truly is Lord Dalhousie's opinion, but that is the vision he saw for the diamond, and that is what actually happens. Interestingly, there are actually papers from the British Parliament itself that kind of map out how unjust and unfair the war held in Punjab was, and how the Anglo-Sikh wars were entirely almost the problem and fault of the British. But that's another video, and we'll get into that later on.
So now we get into the juicy bits. How the Koh-i-Noor was actually smuggled out of India. And this operation was actually so covert, even from the British establishment, only 2-3 people knew about it. So it starts from Dr. John Logan, and we have a letter from him which he basically sends to his home about 2-3 months after the operation has been finished, and he's still so careful that he doesn't mention the name of the diamond, he doesn't mention the Koh-i-Noor. So he basically says that after he's taken control of the Toshakhana and they've ransacked it, he has a Koh-i-Noor and he keeps it safe and in his possession until Lord Dalhousie, or Dalhouse, however you want to call it, he comes to him with a leather pouch and takes the diamond from him and secures it in the pouch. Then Dr. John Logan actually writes an official receipt saying that Lord Dalhousie has received the diamond, and he now says in the letter that he feels so burden free and like a weight has been lifted off of him. And Lord Dalhousie actually is also very, very careful with how the whole thing goes on. And we also know this because of the letters we find written by Lord Dalhousie himself. So, the Koh-i-Noor basically leaves India from Bombay on board the HMS Maida on April 6th, 1850. So Lord Dalhousie actually goes into great detail about how he took care of the diamond. So on board the entire journey, he basically wore the diamond, he sewed the diamond into a belt, double sewed it actually, into a belt that he wore around his waist. And furthermore, the belt had a chain that went all the way up and went around his neck like a collar, just to make sure that he doesn't lose the diamond. And he writes in the letters that the diamond never left him day or night. He slept with it on and everything, except for one time when he had to stop in Dera Ghazni Khan. Over there, he basically put it into a chest and then made Captain Ramsay sit on top of the chest until he got back. So that's how basically they smuggled this diamond out of India in utter secrecy.
And essentially, Dalhousie has a vision in which he wants the Maharaja Dalip Singh to present the diamond to Queen Victoria as means of submission. And so on May 16, 1850, the young boy surrenders the armlet that has the Koh-i-Noor diamond in it to British authorities, and roughly 3 months later, it arrives in Britain. And then the diamond becomes a part of the British royal family. And what's interesting in this is that essentially there's a lot of power dynamics, not only in representing the Koh-i-Noor as means of submission of India to a colonial Britain, but also as kind of like a show off to the rest of Europe. Because before the Koh-i-Noor, the British royal family essentially didn't have a big enough diamond. Now, when I say big enough diamond, I don't mean every jewel, I just mean diamonds per se. The French monarchy had the 140 carat Pitt diamond, whereas Catherine the Great had kind of placed the big 190 carat Orlov diamond into the Russian monarchy's scepter. So, with all of these big diamonds going around in Europe, the British didn't really have one. But with the arrival of the Koh-i-Noor, they had something and they really wanted to show it and its power and what it meant. And that's where the prince consort comes in, Prince Albert. And he basically sets up a very big display of Indian products in the Great Exhibition of 1851. And there, the Koh-i-Noor diamond and the rest of diamonds taken from the Toshakhana have a special show. Now, what's interesting is that they're really trying to sell this diamond up. It's touted as the lion of the Great Exhibition. And it's really, there's a lot of like hustle and bustle around how the diamond's going to be displayed and how amazing it is. And the public has a very big expectation as to what the diamond would look like. The Koh-i-Noor, along with its sister diamonds, are placed in what you could call a golden cage. And the London Times reports it as a golden cage or a prison or a great parrot cage with gilded bars. But what's really interesting is what we see in the 1851 kind of excerpt from the Times New York, in which it states a slight way in which the diamond was received. It says, many people find a difficulty in bringing themselves to believe, from its external appearance, that it is anything but a piece of common glass. And now the problem here you can kind of imagine is, why would you call such a big diamond common glass? It's because the aesthetic sensibilities that were present in the subcontinent differed from the ones present in Europe. And basically, the way they perceived diamonds was different. They wanted it to shine brightly, they wanted it to be really cut cleverly. But for the Indians, other things mattered. So essentially, for the British public, this was not a diamond they knew much about, and they weren't well versed when it came to gemology. So their first presentation of the diamond was something that's very big, but they don't know what to do with it. And there are kind of many quotes that I'll kind of mention that represent the diamond, such as disappointed the public in no ordinary degree, and that it was ungraceful and of a peculiar shape, and it was almost devoid of shape and did not possess any beauty as an ornament. And it also mentions it did not uphold the dazzling luster that its romantic history would naturally lead you to expect. And basically, Prince Albert really wanted the reception to be good. On shilling days, which were basically the weekdays, the diamond was presented as is in the gilded cage for the common people. But on Saturdays, they would kind of spice it up. They would have that red cloth underneath the diamonds. They would have this little jet of gas kind of blowing out and making sure that the light could hit the diamond so they could reflect as much as possible and kind of look, ostentatious and grand and, all fancy. But even with all of this, the diamond wasn't well received in Britain. Like, most people didn't have knowledge of these things, and even with that knowledge, their taste was very different. And Prince Albert was really disheartened after the 1851 exhibition. So essentially, he gathered a fine team of whoever knows things about diamonds. I don't know. But essentially, what they do is they recut the diamond into the shape that we know of it as now. And the originally 186 carat diamond, they kind of make sure that they don't lose its integrity and its shape. But what essentially ends up happening is that 43% of it is chopped off, and the 186 carat diamond becomes into the now 105 carat diamond that is kind of recut to reflect light more prettily. So, fast forward after the 1851 exhibition in London, there comes a time when the 12-year-old Dalip Singh is very influenced by a lot of people placed around him by the British. And he kind of states that he wishes to go to England, he wishes to convert to Christianity, and that's a whole other big segment of his life that we're not going to talk about right now. But let's get back to the thing that's important regarding the Koh-i-Noor, is when essentially he's getting his portrait done in England, that Queen Victoria thinks it's the right time to kind of show him the recut diamond. And she presents the now 105 carat Koh-i-Noor to Dalip Singh, and she asks him about his opinion. And there's a very big passage about how this was presented, and I'll read that out loud. So the queen said that she had something to show to the Maharaja, and then she hands him the Koh-i-Noor. And it's written that he walked towards the window to examine it more closely, turning it hither and thither to let the light upon its facets. There was a passion of repressed emotion in his face, patent to one who knew him well and evident, I think, to Her Majesty, who watched him with sympathy, not unmixed with anxiety. Seeing him stand there, turning and turning the stone about in his hands, as if unable to part with it again, now he had it once more in his possession. At last, as if summoning up his resolution after a profound struggle, and with a deep sigh, he raised his eyes from the jewel and moved deliberately to where Her Majesty was standing, and with a deferential reverence placed in her hand the famous diamond with the words, "It is to me, ma'am, the greatest pleasure thus to have the opportunity as a loyal subject of myself, tendering to my sovereign, the Koh-i-Noor." Now we can say that there's a lot going on, and although Dalip Singh is giving the diamond willingly, but there's clearly coercive means. And what's funny is somehow a lot of British people in this time really want to post about their part and everything. And Dalhousie writes back that Dalhousie said that this was absurd. That how did Dalip Singh say that he presented the diamond? It was all my idea, and I presented the diamond to the Queen. And essentially, Dalip Singh never makes mention of the diamond again. But later on in his life, a lot of changes happen where his opinions about the British change. And essentially, he starts referring to Queen Victoria as Mrs. Fagin, which means receiver of stolen goods. And later on in his life, he tries very hard to take back his throne and everything he feels that was unjustly taken from him, including the Koh-i-Noor diamond. But even as of yet, I believe you can go see it in a museum in Britain.
So this was the story of the Koh-i-Noor. And we'll get into details about the life of Dalip Singh, that the aspect that Reej mentioned. They're very interesting, but we'll get into details of that in the coming videos. So let us know what you guys think in the comments below. And do you like the Sikh series so far?